All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another podcast. Not a video, but a podcast. With everything that's been going on this week in terms of everything with Xbox and stuff like that, I wanted to kind of discuss it. And to kind of be funny about it, I even put Spyro the Dragon gameplay in the background because obviously, it's kind of meant to be funny or whatnot. I mean, I'm not the one to take sides. I'm a fan of Xbox. I'm a fan of PlayStation. I'm a fan of Nintendo. If anything, I'm more of a Nintendo boy at heart, more than anything else, because of what I grew up with playing and everything like that. But with that being said, there's still a lot of in betweens, right? It's like you got to look at all the in betweens and all that kind of good stuff. So, and we're gonna get into the fact that Redfall launched at the state it did, and we're going to get into that and the state of games launching incomplete and stuff like that. And Phil Spencer had an interview today, and then YouTubers and everybody's been pretty much like been making all sorts of videos about it, responding to it. You've even got some developers that have been doing podcasts about it and telling his opinions and stuff like that, or their opinions and stuff like that. I remember earlier today listening to a David Jaffe, who created God of War and who was also the man who was behind all the Twisted Metal games, um that voiced his opinion as well. And um he's definitely the kind of guy to tell it like it is. And at the same time, he also has experience in the business, a lot of experience in the business. So he's whenever you get a podcast with a developer reacting to whatever said interview is going on, or to the failure of a game, when you got a developer talking about the game and stuff like that, they've got two different perspectives instead of just one. Because when you're in the game development business and you know how all this stuff works, then you kind of read between the lines and you can easily tell what's bullshit and what's not. So let's get right into it. So a couple of days before Redfall came out, officially, I had like a day or two before Redfall came out, I installed it. And then obviously I was going to play it on another day where I had more time, and I never got to it for two reasons. Number one, stuff got in the way. And then, of course, number two, you guessed it. It was because of every single thing that I've heard and read from pretty much every single person out there, complete with video footage and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm not even going to play this game. I'm not even going to play this game. It's one thing to hear somebody say that a game is bad for whatever reason or something like that, or they didn't, excuse me, or they didn't enjoy it. But it's a whole other game when they also show you footage of all the shit that's wrong with the game. And the fact that there's not really that much depth to it. So, I mean, it's really disappointing because this was supposed to be Xbox's, like, it was supposed to be one of those games that would kind of help turn the tide, so to speak, a little bit closer to their favor, kind of shift momentum a little bit and change things for the better. But obviously that didn't happen. And right now it's gotten to the point to where a lot of Xbox fans, a lot of casuals, not just the hardcore Xbox fans, a lot of the casuals seem to be concerned about all this because, well, apparently, like, again, a majority of the casuals are not on social media looking at this left and right. However, it does seem like there's a higher percentage of casuals on social media than I thought. They may not spend as much time looking at the gaming side of things, or as in depth as some of us do. But when you look at it from the other side of the fence, it's like, dude, this game is really like it's concerning, because there are a lot of fans out there that are really looking forward to not what's it called, Starfield. And now people are concerned about Starfield. And like it or not, here's another fact that I most recently figured out, because I've always was under the assumption that casuals cared about graphics more than anything. And while that still may be partially true, one thing I know for sure is that casuals also care about frames. It's gotten to the point now to where the most casual part of the community, right, cares about frames. So when you've got that many people caring about frames, you've got it's very important to keep that in mind, because we're in 2023 and 30 frames per second just doesn't really cut it like it used to anymore. It really doesn't. I mean, it was barely less than 10 years ago to where 60 became the standard for so many games out there. And like I'd say over 50% of the games like started implementing 60 frames as their default. So in my right mind, um I'm thinking like I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what is going on at Xbox? Right? I mean, seriously, what is going on at Xbox? Why are so many games previously, like what was it, like a few days before or like a week before or something like that? Jedi Survivor came out. Now, I've seen a lot of footage on Jedi Survivor. I've seen streams, or at least listened to streams and stuff like that. Watch, listen to reviews and everything. And the reason why I say listen is because I'm usually multitasking, whether it's at work or whether it's somewhere else, or one of my jobs. I can't do that with both of my jobs, but at least one of my jobs, I'm multitasking. And basically at this point, it's like you hear a lot of stuff, right? So, and you could tell what's wrong, and then when you have some free time, you look at the footage and you look at everything else, like, yeah. But the biggest thing with Jedi Survivor was there's a couple of things. Well, mainly the PC port was not very good. So that released like all sorts of messed up. I mean, the thing is, you've got the most powerful platform, right? Which is PC. Okay. And I know a lot of console players out there will say, such and such, but the facts are that the PC specifically, like especially if you got anything that's a lower to mid tier and above, it's still more powerful than what your Xbox Series X or the PS5 can do. And I'm not talking about the lowest of the low in terms of PC specs, but I'm talking like high low to like mid, right? So anyway, PCs can do quite a lot, and they can customize that gaming experience quite a lot. So with that being said, the fact that you've got games that are being released on PC that are like either non-functional at all, or you can't optimize them, or something of that nature, to where it just doesn't run, it makes your system crash and stuff like that, it's pretty concerning. And it's the biggest thing that concerns me in terms of the Redfall thing is like, how in the world did they even let this release? Because they said, I remember in Phil Spencer's very recent interview today earlier, he said that they have like they do kind of like a mock-up review with their people or whatnot to see about what the game would score before before fully releasing it or something like that. And they said that it was like in my opinion, it's like, how do those people say that this is a pass with all the different bugs going on with the crashes? And we're not just talking PC, we're talking console as well. 30 frames, the fact that the game is capped at 30, at least for now, is the least of your problems at this point right now. It's the least of the problems. There's there's a whole bunch of buggy messes and stuff like that, and I guess the game is also very, how about this, very bland in terms of what you can and cannot do. And it's just not fun, and it's not really that big, and there's a lot of empty space or something like that. And then you're sometimes certain things are not working that'll allow you to progress and stuff like that. It's like it feels like it feels half-baked. And I mean no disrespect to the movie when I say that, because Half Baked was an awesome movie and all. Granted, I haven't seen it in forever. Maybe I should. But you guys get the point. The thing is, you can't release games like this, especially in the year 2023. And it's like, how did you not see this coming? It's like, how did these people that do these mock-up reviews, how in the world is it that they didn't see this coming, or they didn't, I that's one thing that I personally don't understand. And I'm a guy, and don't get me wrong, I want to see Microsoft succeed. As a matter of fact, let me add more to that. I want to see Microsoft succeed. I want to continue to see Sony succeed, and I want to continue to watch Nintendo succeed. I'm actually really curious as to what Nintendo's going to do next with their with their hardware next, and in terms of the direction that they're going. Um, and then of course Sony, they've got their first party exclusives that are obviously awesome, and obviously always looking forward to those games. But when you put all those things into perspective, it's like okay, Microsoft has this vision, right? Microsoft has this vision to where their primary concern is that they want to get games out to everybody, regardless of device, console, whatever. They have that vision, and it's a beautiful vision, and I 100% support that vision. However, the quality of the content that you give, it's not just about access to things, but it's about what the consumer is accessing, right? So if you're having nothing but stuff that is either just old, or let's say you're having stuff that's like not really good quality and stuff like that, it's like, well, it's no different than a subscription for McDonald's or something like that. Or you can call yourself the McDonald's of gaming or something like that, right? So uh eh, which is a shame, because Microsoft, out of all the three companies, I mean, they, from a financial perspective, they have a shit ton of potential. I think every single one of us can agree on that. But it's not just about the money, right? It's also about who you're hiring to make your games, and whether or not they're capable of whatever it is that they're doing, and all that kind of other stuff. Because I think we can all agree that you need to have people that know what the hell they're doing, right? So I mean, how would you feel if there was a doctor, right, and the doctor didn't know what he was doing? You know what I mean? You can't. There are certain things that you can and cannot do within this business. You gotta hire the right people for the right job, and it seems like Sony's been doing a better job at that than Microsoft. But there's got to be more to it than that, because the question still remains: what the heck is going on Xbox? You know, um, obviously there's been delays for numerous reasons and stuff like that. But again, it all started, for me personally. It all started with like the whole Halo thing. It's like with Halo Infinite, for instance. In my mind, I was like, are the developers or whatnot that detached? You couldn't blame Microsoft themselves for this, right? Are the develop Because Phil actually said in an interview today that they actually want to let the developers kind of branch out and do different things, right, as opposed to just one thing. They kind of support that, at least to a certain extent, right? So, and I think that's good, especially when it comes to the developers and the health of the developers and stuff like that. And from an artist standpoint, I think that's really good. Excuse me. But at the same time, it's like you're starting to wonder things. Like, for instance, like when Halo Infinite came out, the fact that there was no team deathmatch on launch. Think about that for a second. Microsoft didn't make that decision. It's not like Phil went in and said, "Oh, don't worry about not having team deathmatch on launch," or something like that, or don't worry about this, or don't worry about that. No, that I can 99.9% guarantee you that that's not what happened. It's like, what is going on with some of these studios, to where, like, for instance, with Redfall, for a game to release in the state that it was, or for Halo Infinite to not have team freaking deathmatch in there on release for a first person shooter or whatnot. Like, what is up with that? I mean, it's actually a no-brainer, really. It really is a no-brainer that every single multiplayer first person shooter, regardless of what kind it is, has to have a team deathmatch. Especially, and I'm gonna say this here, like, pretending I'm highlighting it, or putting it in parentheses, especially if it's an arena style shooter, of which Halo is, by the way. You cannot be omitting things like team deathmatch. There are certain things with standards of gaming today that you cannot omit. Hell, there's even certain things in standards of gaming that you couldn't omit 10 years ago. So why take that risk? Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, it's the gaming industry. They can get away with this because, well, they can, because there's patches and stuff like that. And in my mind, I'm thinking this: patches are both the best and worst things to happen to games, right? The best in terms of, let's say a multiplayer game needs to balance a few guns out, or stuff like a really cool DLC for single player games or something like that, like, uh, things like that, or like a bug that's in the game that just happened to slip through the cracks. It happens, right? But thanks to things like patches, especially now and over the last decade or so, like these things can get ironed out within a reasonable amount of time, and players can enjoy the game that they invested their hard-earned money in. And now it seems like from a financial perspective, it's like, well, because of patches, these guys, the developers and the publishers, right? They kind of have a way out. They have a get out of jail free card, because it's like, well, we can release it, incomplete, and then anywhere from 3 months to a year from now, it'll be fine, and then we play it. It's like, no, it's like, I mean, you got to treat this the same way you got to treat a car. It's like, can you imagine? Can you imagine spending thousands of dollars and purchasing a car, and that car doesn't run? Imagine that shit. Or like, let's say after about 10 or 20 miles, the car breaks down. Like big time breaks down, and you just got it brand new, or in perfectly good condition to where it should be fine for a while before it has any problems. But they obviously, convince you. But the thing is, because it's a game and they can go in and fix it and patch it, they're like, yeah, we can get away with selling, like we can release this and make all the money that we can upon release, as opposed to delaying it, and we'll fix it later. And it's like, I think that that's partially of what is, I think some of the, well, I don't know if it's a developer thing, that for them getting comfortable with that type of thought process, but from a publisher standpoint, I bet you there's a hand, like Call of Duty is a great example of this. And I used to strictly be a Call of Duty commentating channel. And I can tell you that Call of Duty is a prime example of this. They release, like over the last few years or whatnot, they release something that's like incomplete about the game. They release like a game that's, whether it's lack of content, whatever it is. And then by the time that game's life cycle is over, if not close to it, then you've got like all the content that should have been there at launch. Because before patches got as big as they did, let's take Black Ops 1 for example. How many maps were with Black Ops 1 at launch? What was it, 16? And then, I mean, I know that there were that there were things that obviously got ironed out, because again, patches weren't anywhere to the degree that they are today. When Black Ops 1 was out, I mean, it was just becoming a thing. But you guys get the point. The point is that, like, games were released optimized and they worked just fine, and you'd get your money's worth. It's like, you bought a product that's supposed to work, right, on regardless of what console it's on, right, and it doesn't work, and then it becomes a huge fucking problem. And right now, some like, for instance, when Batman Arkham City came out back in, what was it, 2015, the PC port of that game was just, let's just say, just no, which is a damn shame, because there were people out there that really wanted to play that game on PC, because they had gotten a PC and it's more powerful than what the Xbox One or the PS4 was back in those days. And guess what? They were left disappointed. As a matter of fact, I think they unlisted it from, it was so bad that they unlisted it from Steam for a while until it got fixed, and it took like 3 to 4 months to fix it or some shit like that. So and that was something that scarred Rocksteady and the Batman Arkham games. Like, that was like probably the worst, thing. And of course, you got things like Halo the Master Chief Collection, obviously, which is one of the worst releases in gaming history or whatnot. They royally screwed the pooch on that one, right? And then guess what? Like, I mean, obviously it took like 2 to 3 years before that game really started reaching its potential, and then ever since then it continues to get like stuff added to it here and there, and optimized in terms of frame rate. It already got optimized to 120, but if you're on PC, you could play on even more, to my knowledge. But you get the point. Years prior to all these patches and everything like that, before patches became a normal thing, guess what? Games used to release perfectly fine and play perfectly fine. I mean, sure, they might have a few bugs here and there that kind of slip the cracks, but in comparison to what we're getting now in terms of the amount of bugs and stuff like that, honestly, I think that the game development companies, and again, I'm not citing this as the main problem, but it could be a main problem that's obviously contributing. But obviously, I think part of the problem is that a lot of developers and publishers and stuff like that are just too damn comfortable. They've gotten to the point now to where they're too damn comfortable with the fact that they can get away with releasing something that's unfinished and they can quote unquote finish it later. Right? So this is a problem. I mean, and the thing is, you know how they know they can get away with it? They know they can get away with it because we keep buying it. Like, well, by we, I'm not necessarily saying all of us, but I'm just talking about the community in general as a whole. The majority of players will keep buying it because either because they're familiar with the brand, or maybe they heard something positive about it, or of course because of marketing, right? Why do you think companies like Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, they spend, and movies for that matter, anything, like any business, whether it's corporate or not, they'll advertise in some sort of shape, way, or form. And especially if they're corporate, they're going to market the shit out of something. And it's because they're trying to get the interest of the biggest chunk of the pie, which is the most casual of the casual players, right? So when you do that, it's like, okay, well, they buy it. They buy it. They take your word for it and they buy it. And at the same time, they don't know any better. It's kind of like talking to a mechanic who just wants your money and doesn't give a damn about your knowledge about cars. And the fact that you don't have this knowledge enables that person, right, in any field, it doesn't have to be cars, but in any field, to take advantage of you financially because of your lack of knowledge. And there you go. You see what I mean? I think that is ultimately what it comes down to and what they've been doing. And it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame because the products that they've given us over time, when it comes to gaming, like when you look at the history of gaming and the quality of games and consistency that we used to get upon delivery before technology with the internet and everything like that got to where it is today, games, like when you got a game, you pretty much were 99.999% guaranteed that game would function and would do everything at the very least that you expect it to do. Right now, in this day and age, it's kind of a question mark. In the back of your mind, if you're a gamer that has some sort of clue about this stuff, in the back of your mind is like, you're thinking, I hope it runs good on my PC. Like, for instance, lately I've been playing all my games on console, and I have a beautiful PC. Now, it's not a 4090, it's not like the highest specs, but it's for the mid tier that it is. It's more like upper mid tier, but it packs a punch for a mid tier PC. I got a 3060 Ti and a what's it called, a 12th gen i5, so and 32 gigs of RAM, which is more powerful than what the Xbox Series X can do and more powerful than the PS5. Okay, so, and the fact that you hear about multiple titles releasing like on PC and not running properly or causing crashes and stuff like that, even in systems that are way more powerful than mine, is kind of eye-opening, man. I mean, seriously, because technically speaking, not just because of the amount of money you've invested in your system and with everything that you've gotten for it, but technically speaking, those games nowadays should run best on PC. On PC, it should run best. And on top of that, it also should be customizable. So if a player specifically prefers performance, they should be able to customize it. Or if they prefer graphics, they should beef up the graphics or whatever and just customize the game to operate to their heart's content. This is one of the reasons why people have invested in PCs in the first place, or why they only play on PCs, right? It's because of the kind of freedom and customization that playing on that platform allows. Right? And this is also why people buy the new consoles in the first place. It's like, okay, with this console, I could do more than what I did with my last console, right? In terms of graphics and stuff like that. And, the potential of the console goes up and what the console is capable of doing goes up. So this is why people will buy that new console. And especially since the fact that right now we're at a point to where, most games are not going to come out on old consoles, because if they did, well, let's put it this way, not as many people would buy the new consoles. It's just the way it works, especially when it comes to finances and stuff like that. So it would be more of an optional thing for consumers as opposed to, oh, I got to get this. So the thing is, you got a lot of consumers out there that really don't know too much, and the guys that are promoting their product know this. So there are some people out there that really get taken advantage of simply because of their lack of knowledge. And that's just a fact, unfortunately, just an unfortunate fact. And it's heartbreaking because these people do they work hard for their money. At least most of them do. They work hard for their money, and it's like, okay, they're purchasing a product and they want to get this in return for the product. So if your product is supposed to be such and such and such, and it falls really short or doesn't operate, and it's got all these bugs and stuff like that, and now this person that bought this product that wanted to have a lot of fun right now at this given point in time because the game got released today, who may have possibly called off of work, or just has a day off or whatnot, or is that point in their schedule to where they have free time to play the game on that game's release, guess what? They got to wait 3 months now in order to enjoy that game that they just bought, right? It's kind of like buying dinner and you can't have the food for 3 months or something of that nature. You know what I mean? So, and I think I can safely say that that is even aggravating for the most casual of the casual audience. It's like, it really baffles me how Xbox did not, like, there are people who quote unquote mock test the game, for pre-reviews or whatnot, did not see this coming, right? Or didn't tell them, like, hey, like, you got to delay this game, you got to like, do not release this, it's going to do more damage than it is good. There's no sense in releasing it, right? And the thing is, they're like, Phil with his interview obviously is being as transparent as possible, putting himself in the hot seat in front of reviews, in front of having discussions about this, which is very respectable. And at the same time, it's like, well, he can't tell you everything. So it's like you're being half transparent or whatever it is, right? For whatever reasons of, behind the scenes shit and stuff like that. I mean, I understand that Phil probably doesn't want to tell us of, like, what the plans are for, like, in terms of what games are going to show exactly at the showcase, or what the surprises are and stuff that we don't even know about. I mean, I get that, but it's like, since when? I mean, even, and the thing is, it's like, even back in the day, Microsoft didn't really have this problem back in the day either. Like, you remember the 360 era? I mean, things were going just fine in the 360 era. I mean, sure, you've had a couple bumps in the road. I mean, that's just natural in the progression of things. You're gonna have a few bumps in the road. That's fine, and kind of natural, so to speak, right? That's how you learn. That's how you evolve. That's how you get better. But when you've got something like this, to where games are released like that, I mean, look at this game here, Spyro the Dragon, right? One of the games I grew up with, and the remaster is excellent. I mean, look at this game. Excellent, right? And it released for $40. It didn't release for 60. I believe it was $40 because it was based off an old game, and the only difference was, I think it released for 60. But even if it cost a full $60, I would have still bought it, obviously, because I knew what I was going to get into. First of all, I knew the 3 games, and obviously I saw the reviews. The graphics were updated just fine. There was a few additions added to it. Great. It brought me back to nostalgia and childhood, and of course it was pure eye candy, right? I mean, look at this. I mean, how can you not love the colors? How can you not love the basic platforming gameplay? Spyro remastered, shit, I might even repurchase it for Xbox so I can play it on the Series X and just stream that shit, because I don't feel like getting out my Sony PlayStation 4 out and then going through all that. And plus, I don't think I've got the power cord for that. I've lost it. So I mean, I may even do that if it's on a discounted price. Are you kidding me? Or maybe go to GameStop and just pick up a copy of the Reignited trilogy, as well as Crash and stuff like that, because I adore those games. And the reason why I adore them is because they operated when they worked, and they were, like, for the most part, bug free. I mean, there's always gonna be a few bugs here and there, but you're probably not gonna know they're there because everything else has been ironed out so well. So it's like, and the difficulty settings working correctly and stuff like that. I mean, everything, like, when you get a game and you spend, $60-$70 for a game, there's a certain level of quality that you should expect from that game, that you should absolutely expect. And the thing is that, also another thing is the fact that, like, it's not like, it's not like, how do I put this? It's not like you pay. It's not like the Microsoft person is, like, right there while you're playing, and then you give them the money after you're happy or whatnot, or after you're done playing the game for that first session. It's like, okay, keep it or whatnot. It's not like food, unfortunately, because it's one thing when you got, customers in the food industry or in the restaurant industry that are disappointed with the food that you've given them or the service or whatever it is. And it's a whole other thing with the video game industry. It's like, they're not there, they're not there. So they're not, they can kind of get away with it. It's kind of like having somebody else do the dirty work for you or whatever. But that's just me kind of giving another analogy and another example. But yeah, Redfall, unfortunately, really disappointing. And I just, like, I'm to a certain extent, I'm kind of glad this happened, I was really looking forward to playing the game, and I still might just play it just to fuck around with it or whatnot. I mean, granted, I've heard and seen enough to where it's like I don't even have that much interest anymore. But I'm glad this happened at the same time. You know why? Because when you get stuff like this, it absolutely makes other people aware of it. It makes people aware of it, and that's obviously how you, at the end of the day, that's actually how you solve problems. Once you realize that there's a problem, and especially when other people are telling you that there's a problem, that at the end of the day, after a while, is only going to result in good things happening, because Microsoft doesn't want this to happen again, right? And I'm glad this happened before Starfield too, because right now people are talking about Starfield. They're like, okay, are we just going to be limited to 30 frames? I see a pattern here. It's like, is that game going to release bugged, and not inoperable and not being able to run on PC, for instance, right? And I think that's a reasonable question to ask, like a legitimately reasonable question to ask. And you know why I say that? Well, obviously the proof is in the pudding, but yet at the same time, again, Starfield is going to be supposedly supposed to be even bigger than this game, and it's already ambitious as it is. So it's like, well, Redfall in comparison to Starfield is a lot more basic, right? A lot more basic compared to Starfield. So Starfield, with it being as ambitious as it is, well, especially since when you look at what happened to Fallout 76, Fallout 76 just, when it launched, it was just no, right? And then it wouldn't get fixed up until later. I mean, all you have to do, just watch Angry Joe Show's review on Fallout 76. That man right there. I mean, I may not agree with everything that he does, and I may not see eye to eye with everything that he does, but I'll tell you what. One thing I will say is that, like, if a game really deserves to be ripped a new one, that guy's gonna rip it a new one. And if a game is good, he'll say it's good, and if it's not good, he'll say it's bad. There's only one time when Angry Joe did a review where I kind of started frowning upon his review, and that's, he gave Modern Warfare 2 an 8 out of 10, which in my mind I was like, oh boy, did they pay off? But at the same time, I have, like, I hope they didn't pull a White Boy 7th Street or whatever the hell you want to call it with him, but I don't think so. He's already successful enough, and I don't think he would be corrupt. At least I hope not. But that's just me, really just digging into things. But ultimately, he's still one of my favorite reviewers to watch, still one of my favorite content creators to watch and stuff like that, despite the fact that I could be speculating on shit, or disagreeing on things. But, very educational when you get some of these top-notch reviewers that know what they're doing and know what they're talking about and play the game and criticize it. I think we need it. I think criticism ultimately at the end of the day is a positive thing. So yeah, Starfield is the next thing that we're all concerned about as gamers. Really, we're all concerned about Starfield. I don't see how you cannot be concerned about Starfield after the release of the game like this. And let's see, what else did I want to talk about? Oh yes, the future of Xbox. So as I mentioned before, Xbox what they want to do is they want to reach as many people as possible, right? With Game Pass and their brand and all that kind of stuff. Like, they want to reach everybody, right? Regardless of what platform you're playing on or whatever. They want to reach the mobile players, they want to reach the console players, they want to reach the PC players, they want to basically, like, expand gaming, right? And reach as many people as possible. It's a beautiful vision, and I wholeheartedly agree with that vision. But again, you gotta have quality to go in there with it, right? You gotta have quality. Like, obviously if the Activision Blizzard deal actually ends up going through, which has kind of been put at a halt right now to a certain extent, if that's what you want to call it, like this game right here that you see right here, the Spyro Reignited trilogy, this game is going to be on Game Pass. And the cool thing about this game is that everybody of every age can love this game. And you know how I know this? It's because I'm 38 years old and I still love this game. And as a matter of fact, I kind of want to play it right now, but I can't. I got to go pick somebody up from the airport in about an hour and a half. But you get the point. The thing is, ultimately, you got to put quality in finished games that are unique games as well, and that play the way they should onto your system. Because if you don't, um, like imagine Xbox actually accomplishing their goal and reaching like getting that capability to reach so many players, but every single thing that they reach is like the same quality of what Redfall released. I mean, is that going to do any good, really? And the thing is, with Game Pass, if they release a lot of stuff that's been done already before, and they just kind of put some bells and whistles on it and remaster it and make it play better and stuff like that, or whatever it is, that is only going to last for so long. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like Spyro here, for instance. When this game came out remastered, right, those few years ago, like the hype was real and everybody was praising it, but it's not. It's not something that'll last you for the long run, right? Because there's always going to be new games coming out and stuff like that. There's also going to be other remasters coming out. But the thing is, when it comes to that, you got to keep creating new stuff in order to keep people interested. Because if you're just relying on the old stuff, people are not going to be interested. And look, the Super Nintendo era of gaming is my favorite era of gaming of all time, for me personally, right? Growing up as a kid. But if you were to propose to me that the main the main console or platform that I'd be playing on offers me everything from that era, but that's all I'm limited to playing because the new stuff is so crap in terms of what they're releasing, then I would probably not subscribe. Because it wouldn't last very long. And even if I did subscribe, I wouldn't stay on there very long, because I would get my nostalgic fix. I would get my ultimate fix. And I've been there before. I played the shit out of the games when I was a kid. So it's like, there are so many. Ask a case in proof. Ask anybody who still owns or has an SNES or a Nintendo 64 or, a PlayStation 1, anything from regular Nintendo to, like, let's say PlayStation 1, okay? Or even PlayStation 2. Hell, or even PlayStation 3. Do they still play that system and those games on just by default, like as their main time grabbers for gaming? No, they do not. So that is why it's important for Xbox to allow themselves and Microsoft to allow themselves to be competitive in that field. Phil said that their primary thing is not to and I'm paraphrasing here, to not like compete directly with Sony or not try to beat Sony at their own game. It's like, okay, fine. You may not beat them at their own game, but you can match what they're doing. At least do that, because Sony is giving players a whole bunch of really good new stuff, right? Like when Spider-Man came out, we got Spider-Man Miles Morales that came out after that. You've got God of War Ragnarok. Like all these things right here are making PlayStation thrive and continue forward and giving players new things to look forward to that come out complete and functioning and create new memories and stuff like that. You can't just rely on the old stuff that's already been built and putting it into a package that's affordable, because that's only going to last you for so long. You need, like, basically, like, the old stuff has its expiration date. You need to get new stuff in there. You can't just rely on old milk, man. You're going to need new milk. You're going to need fresh milk. You keep on drinking, like, if you keep on drinking milk that was ready at a certain date, dude. And the thing is, you can't just keep drinking that milk. It's going to expire at some point. So you don't want that to happen with what's going on with Xbox and with everything like that. And to me, when they said that they have like these mock-up reviews, it just shows to me that maybe they've got people that do certain things within the business that just don't belong there and don't know what they're doing. Like, they really don't. You can have, whether it's on the development standpoint or whether it's in like a position of leadership standpoint or whatnot that oversees things. I don't know. I don't care. But like, there's apparently some people that don't know what they're talking about or what they're doing, because if they gave the game a pass in the mock-up review or whatnot, and then the game comes out and pretty much 90+% of gamers are shitting on it because it's not working properly and it's got all these bugs and glitches and is incomplete and it's just very stale and boring, it's like, who in the hell is doing your mock-up reviews? Like, it's very simple. You want mock-up reviews? Simple as that. Just hire people that actually play video games, whether they play for a living or whether it's somebody random on Xbox fucking Live. Seriously, like you know how much time people are putting into games. Get some of these people and send them a message on over Xbox Live or something. Be like, hey, we've invited you to get a copy of such and such early because we want your opinion on the game, right? Get like a handful of those people, and I don't mean a handful as in 5. I mean a handful as in maybe 1,000 or some shit like that. And we want your opinions and stuff like that on the game before we release it. And you get, here's a code, you get to play the game pre-release. Please give us feedback. Would you be willing to do this? How hard is that? If you were to take a handful of gamers that spend a decent amount of time every week playing games, let's say at least 10 hours a week playing games, right? Which, your above average casual gamer plays more than that. And then your casual gamer will play, like, let's say 5 a week, but your above average casual gamers can play more than 10. Okay. That is a significant amount of game time in order to where they can tell you. And plus you can tell how many years they've been playing games. You could tell, about the age demographic of who these people are. You have access to their info, for goodness sake, and over Xbox Live and stuff like that. So your demographic, a lot about your user base. You've got the data. So it's like, how hard is it to send a free copy to like 1,000 of these people and say, hey, try out our game, give us feedback. And then ultimately you get your feedback and everything, like 90% of your feedback says, this game is busted. Do not release this game. Like, as simple as that. So who in the hell are doing these mock-up reviews, man? Are they like executives that only spend a handful of hours a month playing or something like that? Like, why? It just doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't make sense to me. There's some sort of lack of communication going on. There's a lack of something, right? Because seriously, it's Microsoft, and the thing is, games, like Phil said something, and again, I'm paraphrasing once more. Like he said something along the lines of, people will not spend, like one game won't be a console seller or something like that. Well, in this day and age, that is more true than ever, but here's the fact. Halo Combat Evolved, the first Halo, is what put Xbox on the map. Because it was because of Halo that caused Xbox to sell over 50% of its consoles. And when you're talking over 50%, that is a damn good percentage. If you've got one game out there that is solely responsible for selling more than 50% of your console, that's a big deal. Now, granted, I don't think there's any game of today that will kind of have that level of impact, because remember, this was over 20 years ago with Halo Combat Evolved. But when you're talking about games of today, you can still have a difference. It may not be 50%, but if there's one game that actually gets people to buy your console, if it's 10% maybe, or slightly less than 10%, that's still a difference. That's still a difference. 10% or even 5% of, like, let's say 20 million or 25 million people, that's still something. That's a lot of Game Pass subscriptions, right? And I know that Microsoft is $1 trillion company and they're worth so much money and they can do so much and they can do this, they can do this, they can do that. Totally get it. Totally agree. But at the same time, if you're trying to reach people, you're going to care about that extra 5%. You got to start somewhere, man. You've got to start somewhere. And that's another thing that just drives me nuts. It's like, how in the world are these people making these easy ass mistakes and overlooking the simple facts and their own history with Xbox and how they got to be where they are in the first place because of a little game called Halo? And even Phil Spencer said, and I'm quoting here, and I'm slightly paraphrasing, but if they lose their way with Halo, they lose their way with Xbox. And they're like, well, they kind of lost their way with Halo and Halo Infinite. You know what I mean? So, or actually, maybe even starting with Halo 4. A lot of Halo fans will say that it all started with Halo 4 in terms of losing their way. So it's like, it just kind of makes sense, right? It's like it's almost like they've lost sight of what is important and what got them there in the first place. Because that's all that Microsoft needs to do. Microsoft already has the tools and the resources, obviously, in their possession in order to make one of the best platforms in gaming with their own flavor and be successful in reaching their vision, as well as not just reaching their vision, but to like really nail it out of the park with like subscription services and stuff like that. Because ultimately, Xbox has the biggest potential to do so with the amount of resources that they have. But obviously, those resources are not being used properly, and I think that's the problem. I think that's a big part of the problem, um, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And um, you got to, you can't ignore something like that, and that's another reason why I think a lot of people need to be harder on Microsoft, because it's like they've got all of this potential and they've shown that they're capable with the first two generations of their console, right? With the original Xbox and then with the Xbox 360, it just took off. And then they screwed up with Xbox One's generation. And right now with the Series X, it's kind of been kind of lukewarm, but they're headed towards ice cold if they keep going in this direction. You know, we don't want, like, for me personally, I don't want to see another thing. Like, I don't want to see another Sega again. Like, and what I mean by this is I don't want Microsoft to go through what Sega went through, because Sega, like, they got the Sega Genesis, the CD, a lot of really good first party games, you know, a handful of first party games. And then they started really falling off the hill with Sega Saturn. And I had every single Sega console, and then they stopped making Sega games. I mean, they stopped making consoles, and then the next thing you know, it was just Sega that's like third party, right? So is that what we're going to see happen with Microsoft? I mean, part of me thinks, as a gamer, part of me is like, well, it kind of would be nice to see more people playing Halo. But at the same time, it's like, well, you know, but you get the point. So it's like, and every single time I look at a game like this that I put in the background conveniently, is that you look at games like this and it reminds you a lot of the past. Why? Because in the past, we got stuff that was complete and released. Like, you would get that game and you're 100% guaranteed that that game's going to work. Especially since back in my day, like when the original Spyro the Dragon came out, there was no the internet wasn't where it was today. And there wasn't any online gaming, not until 2004, and then patches would come out sooner, like a little bit later after that. So it's like, you know, whatever they released, it damn well better be finished, or else the company would be done for. But right now, again, they've got some wiggle room. They see they got wiggle room thanks to the power of technology, and we got this shit going on. That's part of the problem, in my opinion. And I don't see anybody else making videos on it and talking about, like, I don't see that specific thing being mentioned. Is that they might be getting lazy, or they might, or not necessarily the devs, but let's just say the publishers might kind of be letting the devs get away with releasing the game, or the publishers might, you know, allow themselves to release the game because they know they got some wiggle room, so to speak. Yeah. uh I don't know what, like, just a second. But I'm just, I'm actually even surprised that I'm surprised. uh and I don't mean that in a cocky way at all. I mean it with total humility. But you know, you always try to think of, on the optimism, you know, on the optimistic side of things. You know, um you always want the absolute best for the developers and their games, and you want the developers to succeed. You want the company to succeed, and you know they've got the resources, you know they've got the potential. Their first two generations of consoles proved that they could do it. And then to see this company kind of get to the point to where they're just not at least within striking distance of hitting their goal is just, well, or I'm sorry, at least within striking distance of meeting the standards, is really disappointing. Now, as far as Game Pass goes, again, I absolutely love it. But again, you can't, like, the success of Game Pass will only last for so long. if their first party titles continue to get released disappointingly like this, you know? And that's another thing I just thought of. Like, maybe with Game Pass and everything like that, since people have access to these games anyway, maybe because they have a whole library of games, maybe that's how they figure they can get away with this. Because, well, the game is going to be on the library anyway, so they can come back to it the next amount of months later and they'll get that full experience. But still, as a consumer, though, you're expecting something on a certain release date, and then you're gonna, I mean, and then that's the kind of and at the same time, it's gonna build on your reputation. It's like Microsoft is gonna be known for those guys that kind of release their stuff raw as opposed to fully cooked. And then the gamers and even the casuals are going to know about it, and they're like, yeah, I'll it's like, yeah, this game's coming out now, so it's like, yeah, we won't count it as released now, we'll count it for 3 months later. Because they know what they're in for and what they're about to get, because that's been the track record. I mean, how do you, like, I'm glad that this is going on, and I'm glad a lot of YouTubers are talking about it, and I'm glad that people are shitting on Redfall. You've kind of got another you got a couple of other guys that are kind of saying, oh, some of them are saying, oh, it's not that bad, and they're giving it mid-tier review scores or something like that, and it's like whatever. You got the gaming population or whatnot. You got the gaming population that's basically telling it like it is on YouTube, and it's like, but yeah. So let's talk about what else did I want to talk about over here as I look back on this. So we've talked about Redfall, we've talked about the future of Xbox. Yeah. So, and again, I want to go back to Starfield in a minute. Now is like, okay, like at this point right now, like we've already mentioned that Starfield's frame rate, or the lack of 60 frames per second at minimum on console, is a problem for Redfall. But we mentioned that like that's like the least of its problems compared to all the other stuff, like the bugs and the fact that the game is very bland and all that other stuff, right? Okay, cool. Now with Starfield, if it releases at 30 frames per second, which they're going to tell us whether or not that's final, like in terms of like whether or not they're going to have 60 frames per second at launch or whatnot, they're still waiting on that answer, so to speak, right? Okay. Now, with that being said, is it gonna be like I'm just hoping that the game at least gives the player a lot of content, right? Because it's insanely ambitious, and the previous game that these guys made was what, Fallout 76, if I'm not mistaken. So you can forgive, but you don't forget, right? So we can't forget what happened with that game, and they probably spent a lot of time working on that game as well post-launch in order to get that game doing what it's supposed to do. So, and again, Angry Joe made a review on that one. So as far as that's concerned, like a lot of people have their eyes on Starfield now. And because of what happened with Redfall, a lot of people can't help but think that, like, hey, is this going to happen with Starfield? And Starfield, again, very, very ambitious title. An open world, multi-open world, first-person shooter RPG, I guess, or something like that. Like, extremely ambitious, and it's looking to be the main thing. And a lot of Xbox players are basically like, they have their sights aimed at this title, and they have ever since the announcement of the game, and rightfully so. They're gonna have a Starfield Direct or something like that, like right after the main Xbox showcase. I think that's next month. They're gonna have a Starfield showcase or whatever, to where it's gonna be just dedicated to Starfield with all the bells and whistles and all the news. Like, you guys remember when they used to do a Call of Duty multiplayer reveal thing? They're going to do the same thing with Starfield, which is pretty cool. If you ask me, that's great. I think a lot of players are going to be watching it, and I think a lot of people are also going to Obviously, there's content creators going to make content about it and all that kind of stuff. Great. But ultimately, the big deal here is that they are making, like, it's the best way for them to be transparent with the community. And I highly recommend that they are as transparent as possible during that time and not BS people, and to be honest with people in terms of, like, let's say answering a few questions and stuff like that, because they know that one of the main questions is there going to be at least a 60 frames per second mode on console? And the reason why I say on console is because, again, the majority of players play on console. Let's be real here, and there better be on PC. I mean, can you imagine? Like, a lot of PC players are going to be pissed if they have a cap at 30 frames per second. Like, I shit you not. And I don't care how small the PC community is compared to the console community, but they're absolutely 100% right. And if that ends up being the case, I hope that their voices are heard to the maximum. Okay? Especially with the PC. So, and then again with console, again, let's just say, for instance, worst case scenario from a frame rate standpoint, Redfall gets 30 frames on console and up to 60 frames on PC at launch, and then an X amount of months later, they get the frame rate issue optimized, right? Well, the next question that comes to mind is this insanely ambitious and huge game going to be complete? Is it going to be buggy? Is it going to release buggy? Because again, the more a game is capable of doing whatever it is doing, the more juice it takes from your system and all that kind of stuff, and kind of opens up the possibilities for things to kind of be bugged and all this other shit, right? So again, which is another reason why people are pissed at Redfall, because Redfall is nowhere as technologically advanced as what Starfield is trying to be. Especially when you consider also the amount of content that they're looking to put in the game. And again, with the Starfield Direct thing coming up, a lot of players are going to get a lot of questions answered, at least hope so. I mean, we're going to get a view of the game and all that stuff. Oh, I almost forgot. When they promoted Redfall, they were showing footage at 60 frames per second. The footage that they were showing was 60 frames per second. And then when the game gets released, it's got a cap of 30. So just a little something to throw out there. Again, not a Microsoft fanboy, not a Sony fanboy, not a Nintendo fanboy. I'm a gaming fanboy. And like I said earlier, like if I was a fanboy of any of these three, I would probably be a Nintendo fanboy more than anything. But that's something that you got to you gotta really be straightforward and transparent with this shit, right? So it's a very clever way for them to be sneaky. So when it comes to the Starfield reveal event, the whatever it's called, we gotta look between the lines, right? Chances are that they might really, like, any footage that we see of the game. Like, the thing is, number one, are we going to see live footage, for one? And number two, are we going to see stuff that's pre-recorded? So those are the big questions. A big red flag is if there was a lot of non-live footage. Like, if everything was like not live and it was already pre-recorded, pre-rendered, and all that kind of stuff, that right there is a red flag. Okay, so I just want to get into that right now. Red flag. Now, if you see live footage and it's being played in real time, okay, that's a good sign. That's a good sign, and it's something that they should go for. Absolutely. But there's also everything else. It's like they need to show us, like, in depth of a lot of stuff. Like, for instance, by the time that conference is done, which is going to be like an hour, I think the Starfield presentation is going to be like an hour. By that time that is done, like, people should feel satisfied with what they saw, and of course they should also simultaneously feel like, number one, they should be hyped for the game and want to play the game, but they also want to know more, right? Because you can only tell them or show them so much in like an hour, right? You can tell them a hell of a lot, but you can only show so much in like an hour, right? Okay. So again, the biggest thing to look out for with the Starfield thing, I don't know, I might even make a video about this. Maybe, maybe not. I will see. But read between the lines. Read between the lines and check first and foremost to see if the footage that they're going to show at that reveal event is, and I'm not talking about the Microsoft showcase. I'm talking about like after that, because Starfield's going to have its own dedicated showcase or whatever it's called, Starfield reveal, Starfield event or whatever, or direct or whatever. Check to see if all this stuff was already like all the footage is pre-rendered or pre-shown or whatnot. And if it's live, then okay, then that's a good sign. If it's not live, it's just a way for them to be sneaky. Just like they were sneaky with Redfall, to where the footage they showed us was already pre-recorded, pre-rendered, and all that kind of stuff, and they could mess with it and turn it into 60 frames per second, show it off as 60 frames per second and smooth, as opposed to 30, because 30 would look rough in comparison. So it's like, yeah. And plus, it's very easy for them to take footage and to get rid of bugs or something like that, or to show footage of any areas that are not bugged or anything like that. So in that sense, but when it's live, it's all right there in its glory, right? It's a build of the game that is either up to par where they're at right now or slightly previously, and it's like, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. And they even used to do that a lot at E3. I remember at E3, they used to show, they used to have the developers right up there on stage, on the main stage for the main games that they would show off. They would have them right there on the main stage, and they'd be playing a game live. One of the games that comes to mind right away is God of War 3 for, actually, you know what? God of War 2018. Like, Cory Barlog played God of War, that part of God of War 2018 that they were showing when they first revealed the game. Seriously. So upon that, it's like, it's one of the best ways to show whether or not like you're legit and upfront. And it's like, now that doesn't happen as much anymore, you know? So it's like, let's just get back on the ball and focus on the things that we did right and just do that. Again, because a lot of these companies with games and stuff like that, they also like add in, and I've mentioned this previously, they add in stuff to their games or just try to change things just for the sake of change or whatnot, or try to fix something that's not broken. And it's like, why are you doing that? There's no reason to do that whatsoever. None. So they just need to get better people. They need to move their pieces around, in my opinion. That's what they need to do. They need to move their pieces around like a chessboard for the certain situations. You know, don't put your pawn in front of a queen unless it's got another pawn backing. But again, that's a whole other. We could go on a tangent about that. But don't have your pawn facing a queen without backup or something like that, right? For instance. So, again, you got to put your pieces in the right place, and I think that's one of the biggest things that Microsoft is doing wrong, is that it seems, okay, and I'm talking from the outside looking in here, you know, it seems that Microsoft just doesn't have their pieces in the right place. And it's like, I don't know if it's because they don't know what they're doing or whatever the deal is. I don't understand. But whatever it is, they need to self-evaluate, and they need to look at their history and quickly remind themselves of what got them there in the first place. And that's all they need to do. Because if you think about it, that's what Sony's doing. Sony's has always had great exclusives, and they continue to have great exclusives. And it's one of the things that made them great. Nintendo, same thing. Right? I mean, when Nintendo releases Breath of the Wild 2, also known as Tears of the Kingdom, like, there's no doubt. And like, for instance, look at Mario Odyssey, right? Look at Mario Odyssey, look at Zelda, Breath of the Wild, for instance. Those two games were big. Look at Metroid Dread and all that. All these games release functional. 100% guaranteed. They release functional. They're not crazy buggy. They don't cause crashes and stuff like that. I mean, I understand that the Nintendo, for instance, is older hardware and stuff like that, but that's not the point. That doesn't matter, right? Oh, and by the way, they release at 60 frames per second. Well, for the most part. Like, for instance, Metroid Dread ran at 60 to my knowledge. What else? Mortal Kombat 11 ran at 60. Like, I remember I actually I rewatched a rapid fire interview with Ed Boon, and they're like, they asked him, is the Nintendo Switch version going to run at 30? And he's like, no, the Nintendo Switch version is going to run at 60. And he's like, how's it looking? He's like, it's looking great. I'm like, no hiccups or anything. He's like, no blurry visuals. He's like, no, it's Mortal Kombat 11. Like, you should have seen Ed Boon's face when he was asked that question. He's like, you know, it's like, you see, you get the point here. Like, and if you look at what NetherRealm releases every single time they release, it's like, I could never be mad at NetherRealm for not revealing anything about Mortal Kombat 12. I mean, despite the fact there's been a teaser now recently, so hopefully any day now. But the thing is, like, NetherRealm has always released a very high quality game with a shit ton of content that works properly and is not bugged. And the frame rate is good and all that other shit. It's like, you're getting a complete product. Why is it that a certain types of developers like Sony Santa Monica and all that kind of stuff, like NetherRealm, Sony Santa Monica, and a few others, and I want to name a Microsoft developer here too, actually. I don't know. I mean, the guys that released Doom Eternal, I mean, those guys obviously did a great job. Doom 1 released great. I mean, but granted, Doom 1 came out before the acquisition of Microsoft acquiring Bethesda, but you guys get the point. I think Doom Eternal was out before then too, but let's put it this way. Obviously, we already know that Microsoft has a problem on their hands and they got to look within and all that shit. But let's just say Doom 3. If Doom 3 comes out and if Doom 3 is all fucked up, it's like, dude, what are you doing to these developers that you're acquiring? Whoever's overseeing them or whoever's making the decisions or whatever the deal is, like, something is up and something is wrong. You know, and that's one of the biggest things that I see in some of these YouTube thumbnails of some of these creators that are developing, that are making this content, is like, they're saying it right then and there. They're like, what is going on? What happened? And that's like, those are some of the biggest questions. What happened? What is going on? What this, what that? So yeah, this is very interesting. And by the way, I don't know about you guys, and thank you very much, by the way, for watching. It's really nice to have company in here, by the way. I like, as far as gaming goes, right? As far as the basics of gaming and things that bring warmth to your little gaming heart, like when you look at a game like this, which is Spyro Remastered, doesn't it remind you a lot of what makes games great in the first place? I mean, even if you've never played it, doesn't a game like this, like when you look at these visuals and stuff like that, like, and you're looking how this game is smooth and it's operating very well and there's no bugs or anything like that, and the fact that the colors look great and everything like that, like, just look at it from a basic standpoint. Doesn't that remind you of what it is about gaming that made it great in the first place and why you love games? Right? Hi, Laura. Like, it really isn't something that has to be too complicated. It's a very simple concept at heart. And focusing on those simple concepts is what ultimately gets you to success, in my opinion. You know, in my humble opinion. So, but yeah, ultimately though, looking at it from an optimistic standpoint, again, there's still potential. There's still potential for Microsoft to reach their stride and to really get back to what their potential is supposed to be in terms of their vision. But right now, it's still rough. And right now, I'm glad that there's problems going on because they need to be addressed. And the best way to address them is to talk about them. And they were able to get Phil Spencer on there and do an interview. And a lot of people know about stuff that's going on. So it's like, okay, it's like, now that we know about it and we're talking about it, let's address this problem, you know, because it needs to be addressed. But yeah, So I've been going at it here for how long have I been live? I'm trying to look at my stream thing, but I've been live for probably over an hour or something like that. And let me see. Yeah, an hour and 10 minutes or so. I would love to keep going, but I've got to be somewhere very soon picking a friend up. So um and I want to be there on time, so I got to get ready to go here. Uh but I I'm optimistic, and for those of you guys that didn't get a chance to listen to everything, just you can always go back in the you just hit the live tab, and you can see and you can watch it from start to finish because there is a DVR obviously, so you can go back and listen and scroll and stuff. But um as passionate as I was like during this entire stream in terms of what I had to say, I'm still very optimistic for the future of what Microsoft could bring to the table. But at the same time, we gotta, we can't just praise a company, but we also got to give them some crap whenever they mess up. Um, so yeah. But anyway, that's gonna conclude this stream for now. I might do something else a little bit later. But anyway, but I have got to go. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the visuals of this beautiful game as much as I do. And I'll catch you guys on the next stream. Thank you very much for keeping me company, and I will see you guys later. Bye.